Welcome to Cinemaphile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemaphilepod.com. Will Poulter and Noah Centineo deliver pitch-perfect performances as brothers Cody and Jack Parsons, navigating a court-mandated drug rehabilitation program in a pocket of rural Ohio hit hard by the opioid epidemic. There's a lot to this film. Great acting, wonderful story in the way it's told. Union County. We're joined today by the director and writer, Adam Meeks. Adam, welcome to Cinemaphile.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this film works on so many different levels. The performances, as I mentioned, of Will Poulter and Noah Centineo are wonderful. But for me, the heart and soul of this film is the story itself, the struggle with opioid addiction, but also the way you're able to build this world around them that feels so authentic and so much is a part of the film, telling of the film. Let's talk about the inspiration behind Union County.
Yeah, I'm from, maybe more broadly speaking, the same part of Ohio, central Ohio. I lived in Columbus for the first 6 years of my life. My parents are from there. My grandparents are from there. So it's sort of like home multi-generationally. But we left when I was 6, my immediate family, and I lived in Montana, and then I lived in Oregon and ended up in New York for film school. And so it wasn't until I was in my mid 20s and starting to spend time back in Ohio with my grandmother, who's getting older, that I kind of started to have my own personal relationship with the place that I'm from and started to kind of see it and fall in love with it as an adult for the first time. And around that time, you didn't have to look very hard to see the impacts and effects of the opioid epidemic and the way that it was affecting, folks close to us and my friends and family and loved ones. And so, we were all very aware and really feeling the pain and the suffering and the tragedies of the epidemic. But I was invited by the previous judge of the drug court program that we work with in the film to sit in on a meeting. He was a friend of my uncle's, and my uncle introduced us. He knew that I was kind of interested in exploring, more broadly speaking, like the kind of effects of, or I guess what was going on both with addiction and recovery in Ohio at the time. And when I sat in on that first meeting, I was just so blown away by the humanity in the room and the compassion and this kind of like community that was showing up for itself in a real kind of like long-term comprehensive way. And so I remember leaving that first meeting that I sat in on and thought, I think if I could sort of take this feeling of this room and translate it to the screen, that might be a meaningful contribution to the cultural narrative that surrounds addiction and recovery. That we could introduce a new kind of counter narrative to the tragedies, which is also the way folks are getting back on their feet and the people who are helping them do that. So it really started from this specific courtroom that I ended up we built the whole film out from.
Well,
Yeah.
I know you did a short film in this realm of this kind of story. How much did it inform the long form film that we see at Union County?
Yeah, it's a similar kind of starting point for the main character, played by a different actor, but a similar kind of character and circumstance place. But the short covers like 3 days, and the feature covers 3 or 4 months. Feature became much more about a relationship between foster brothers and their kind of differing paths through recovery. So a lot of that came out of just kind of like deepening relationships in the community and identifying kind of like new stories and maybe a framework that felt like it could better hold 95 minutes as opposed to 12. And it kind of also allowed multiple perspectives to sort of weave through this real community in a way that was always kind of the intention, was like, how do we take some ultimately fictional characters and performances and use them in a way to kind of like weave the audience through this community and program over time. So it just kind of took on a larger canvas and some different supporting characters and relationships, but the kind of starting circumstance and kind of essence of the character is the same. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that this film highlights, and I love the way that the paradigm in this story has changed, because I go back to the days of the early days of the drug wars. We knew a lot at that time, but we couldn't put it into words. But it was mostly a war on people,
Yeah.
a specific kind of people, by the way, people at the margins. And this country suffered through that for decades. And there was finally some kind of a shift. So I think we reached a critical mass. We just can't do it this way anymore. We can't
Yeah.
keep putting people in jail. And I love the way that this film pivots on that, and that it's about recovery. It's about people getting better. That is the goal, instead of figuring out ways to put them in prison, which
That's right.
is so welcome. And it's so welcome to see it done in such a humanizing way, the way you do it in this
Uh,
film.
Thank you. And everything that you're recognizing that feels so welcomed and so important exists in this program and in this room and with these people like Annette Deao, who runs the program, and she plays herself, a version of herself in the film as well. And the Judge Bragg, who is also the judge in the movie, it's his courtroom. We filmed a lot of this, a lot of, the movie more or less as a documentary because for many reasons, but it it's all happening there on a regular basis and a daily basis. And we didn't have to fictionalize or manufacture much or sort of like contrive something that felt hopeful or whatever. That's kind of what's happening on a regular basis and the trajectory of folks. It has like a over 50% success rate, which is really astonishing for a recovery program. And so what you're saying is really so much of what I recognized too and thought, oh, wow, this could be an exciting contribution to the narrative if more people were aware of this. And it's a less kind of like dramatically sexy, seductive story to tell in terms of like somebody kind of like rising up out of something as opposed to falling deeper and deeper into tragedy in the way that we're kind of used to traditionally structuring dramas and narratives. But I thought if we can figure out how to do it in a way that still feels emotionally and dramatically compelling, but helps point in a new direction, in a positive direction, yeah, that it could sort of demonstrate and introduce what's happening in this one courtroom to more people. And what you said is something that I think is so important as a kind of next step in how we're treating folks dealing with addiction, which is that it's kind of this program that's almost like Trojan horsed within a kind of judicial system and a court program. And instead of sending folks to jail without an opportunity for real treatment and recovery, this program is offering folks 18 months of support and care and relationships and resources to get back on their feet back in the real world immediately. And I think it's profound. And obviously I spent the better part of the last decade working on this project. So it's continued to mean a lot to me and maintain a lot of kind of resonance.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. And that's a lot of those things are what we, wanted to do with this.
Just want to quickly remind our listeners we're talking to Adam Meeks. He's director and screenwriter for a wonderful film. Hate to use indie, but it's a smaller film, let's put it that way, in terms of its the budget, but you get so much out of it. That's called Union County. And you mentioned Annette, and you mentioned also, did I say Jim or John? Sorry. The judge?
Who's
Sorry.
that? The judge, Kevin Bragg is his
Kevin
name.
Bragg, pardon me.
Yeah.
Kevin Bragg, some others that are in this film who are people who have experienced this. They've lived this story in many ways. But boy, did you get a lot out of Will Poulter and Noah Centineo. They are terrific. They're terrific together. They're terrific independent of one another. Also, quick shout out to Sylvie, Max, and Elise Kibler, who just really kind of round out the story. They give it the depth, the
Mhm.
emotional gravitas to really make this work well. So talk about your cast because they're great.
Yeah. And Emily Mead too, who plays the Cody's sister in the film. I
I'm
also
sorry, I misidentified. Pardon me.
Yeah, no
I'll fix that.
worries.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
worries. I
yeah.
just she's extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, we got it really what was for us like a dream cast across the board. And that's true of the non-professional actors who played themselves. Like they were the clear first choices in those roles. And then, Will and Noah and Elise and Emily and
Yeah, thank
David
you.
Holohan and so many others were yeah, just like our dream cast for this movie. And Will and Noah had worked together on Alex Garland's film Warfare
Right.
a year or two prior, and they loved each other and had this almost built-in kind of like sibling relationship, brotherly relationship already going in. Um, and they also had an interest in a relationship in trying to get to something very as kind of close to the authentic kind of truth of an experience based on that they wanted to kind of continue exploring like process wise. So they had both kind of individually and personally had big hearts for the story and also really wanted to make it in the same way we did, both in terms of process and also in terms of like building real relationships in the community and not being extractive, but really making it with a community instead of like imposing it on a group of people. So they were just, ideal partners at every step of the way. They came out with us in the fall before our spring production for a little bit and, you know, attended court meetings with us and went over to Annette's house for dinner and kind of, started to kind of get their feet under them there. And then both spent, more or less a month in the lead up to the production out there with us, just kind of settling in and, very kind of patiently and thoroughly inhabiting their characters. And so it was amazing to watch because by the time we were up and running and we were in their Monday afternoon real court meetings, Will and Noah were Cody and Jack in the room for 90 minutes, not knowing when the judge was going to call them up in the same way no one else in the program does, and stepping up and reacting to the judge and walking this incredibly difficult line between fully knowing and being ready to do exactly what the kind of like scripted scene required, while also being fully present and responsive to any kind of like left turns the judge would take or kind of interruptions or deviations. And it was this amazing thing to watch every day, and I did not take it for granted for a second, where we have this like really beautiful mix of like spontaneity and just kind of like dramatic specificity and like rigor in a way. And they both made it look effortless.
I just real quick question about that because they're in the courtroom and all these different scenes where we see people who we know are non-professional actors.
Yeah.
What at any point are they interacting with them to kind of get their bearings in terms of what they should be doing? Was there much of an back and forth with them, or was it just being in the room with them where they felt that kind of responsibility and or direction? That's the right word to use.
Because they were there for a while in the lead up to the production till we actually started, cameras were rolling in the courtroom. Everybody had kind of gotten comfortable with
Okay.
everybody. I think we'd gotten to a place where, all the participants had gotten past the kind of surreal experience of seeing the guy from Guardians of the Galaxy or in their courtroom or whatever the reference was. And we'd sort of gotten past that and formed, a relationship with the people, with Will and Noah and vice versa. And so by the time we were filming, I think it felt kind of like, another Monday in the courtroom for everybody. And that was really important to us to not feel like we were imposing any kind of expectations on them, but we're just inviting any folks who wanted and were willing to participate to participate. And that just required, we basically at the beginning of each meeting would say, raise your hand if you don't want to be filmed today. And if they didn't on a given, that could be different between Mondays if you were down one day and not the next. Like it was always voluntary. And we, it was just about pointing our cameras away and turning it off for a given interaction with the judge if they weren't willing to be filmed. And then all of that with the real participants was essentially documentary footage. Nothing was kind of like directed or scripted. It was just permission to film, the interaction. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. This
Thank
is
you.
just a terrific film. Once again, the film is Union County. And as we've been talking about, a film that takes us down a road less traveled when it comes to talking about stories of people dealing with addiction, especially in rural America, and how that usually plays out. It doesn't do it in this film. It puts faith in us as an audience. They're willing to go down a different road, hear a different story about people who are able and worthy of redemption. And a film that features a fantastic lineup of terrific performances, including Will Poulter, Noah Centineo, Emily Mead, Elise Kibler, and a number of wonderful performances from non-professional actors as well. The film comes out on August 14th. That's this coming Friday, so be looking for it. Writer-director Adam Meeks, thank you so very much for your time and for your work on Union County. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being so thoughtful about the movie, and I'm glad it resonated.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.